Now let's take a look at how we can quickly add some pipes to the underneath structure. So this is going to be a little bit confusing maybe because we just talked about extruding polygons. But here we're going to use extrude in a different way. It's actually a different tool. And so let's take a look at how that works. So what we want to do is create some pipes along the bottom of this. And so what we can do is actually draw them out as a curve and then create the pipes that way. So let's go into the top view and actually draw out a curve rather than using a primitive. We'll go to Create CV Curve Tool. Now this will allow us to click points to actually create our curve. So we'll go ahead and start back at the back here, and we'll just kind of create a little bit of a corner, and then we'll come here at the front and create a little bit of another corner and drop that in. So we just want something like this. Now we can always go in to our component mode and tweak the shape of those. So coming in here, we can also at any time go ahead and I want to actually add, grab our point here, and I want to add a curve point. I can drop it in there, and then under Edit Curves I can insert knot, and that will allow me to add an additional point. So I can come in and shape this from the top, and we just want to get it into the shape of our, what we want our, basically our pipe to be. Okay. If we come in here on the side, you can see this is where it is. We actually want to move it out, and we want to turn on curves so that we can see them. And then from the side view, we can go ahead and shape this. So I want to center the pivot so that our rotation is in the middle of it, and I'll just kind of rotate it down and kind of move it down into this area here. Okay, and then we can come in here in our perspective view and just kind of figure out where we want it. We can kind of rotate it a little bit in the Y. Okay, and once we have this, let's go ahead and actually duplicate this. Control D to duplicate, and let's make a copy. Let's go ahead and scale it down a little bit. I'm going to rotate it and move it back, so we just have a couple of different pipes here. Okay, and I'll move it, make sure I move it back into the piece here. Okay, so right now we only have the curves. We don't have any geometry along the curve, so we need to decide what kind of shape we want to take along this curve. And we just want a pipe, so it's just going to be a circle. So we'll go ahead and create a circle. And go ahead and create the circle. Now with that circle selected, we're going to hold down Shift and select the curve. Okay, so that's going to be the profile is going to be the circle, and the path is going to be this curve that we drew out. So what we want to do now is something called extrude, which is again confusing because we just did an extrude on a polygon and it was something completely different. Well, it's sort of different. It's actually pulling that geometry now along this curve, much as we pulled the geometry out from the polygon. It's the same sort of thing, but this extrude is going to be found under Surfaces, and you can see extrude here. So we selected the circle first and then the curve, and we'll do an extrude. And now you can see that it's actually taken that circle along this curve to create that pipe. Now again, we have a history connection here. When we're working with NURBS, we have that history, so that if I select the circle and now go into the, not the extrude, but the make NURBS circle, and take the radius, I can increase the radius, and you see that increases the radius of the pipe because it's using that curve to create that geometry. So I can tweak that and change it up. Now with that circle selected, I can now also shift select this curve and do an extrude on that as well, so that when I select that circle now, it has history with both of those curves, and as I change the radius, it's changing the radius on both of those pipes at once. So a really nice feature is the way that it keeps the history for those curves and for those NURBS objects to be able to change those interactively. Okay, so again, just keep that straight in your mind. There's an extrude that will take polygons and extrude them down. There's also an extrude for NURBS, which works a little bit differently. It works with a profile curve and a path curve, and it extrudes geometry along those curves. And if I were to change the shape of the circle, that would also be reflected here. You know, make some sort of a square out of it or a star or something. You'd see that reflected in our pipes. Okay, so that's how we can use NURBS curves with a NURBS extrude to create some pipes. So for the next lesson, let's take a look at how we can create a curve that's actually fitted to this surface, not necessarily going around in this direction or straight across in this direction, but along the surface so that we can use that to create additional geometry. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can project curves onto our NURB surface in the next lesson.